All right, greetings. We're going to cover chapter 3 here. So, what's going to happen for chapter 3 is I'm going to ask you to start and stop your video a couple times to do some activities and to check out different multimedia components. I can't really. Let's see. So one of the things I can't do is probably, I found kind of a creative way to do it, but YouTube would probably take my video off because it has copyrighted material. So what I want you to do now is I would like you to pause the video and I want you to go click the link attached to this to play Andre 3000's "You Are the Prototype" is the song. Prototype is the song. So just pause the video here and listen to that song. Okay, welcome back. So, what I would like to do now, so just keep that in mind. You don't have to do anything now, but I would like you to think about that song in the future. But prototype is a concept we will be discussing this class, and it's something you should know for the final exam. And the way Andre 3000 uses prototype is fairly straightforward in the way that we think of it. So prototype in our mind is something that serves as kind of original basis for evaluating other things. So if I in this song, Andre 3000 is saying that this woman that he met is the prototype for all the loves that shall follow. So he believes that this love is the one, prototypical love that should be emulated by all other lovers in the future. And that is what's going on in this song, and that's how prototype operates in our brain. We have a prototype of something. So the first, your mother or your father are prototypes for what parents should be. And if you meet a parent who is different than your mother and father, then they're going to cause some cognitive dissonance there. So that is prototype. So just keep that in your mind. It's something that will come up commonly in discussions, but it will come up on your exam. Next, I would like to do an activity. So what I would like you to do now is write down 7 pieces of your activity, of your identity. Okay, so chapter 3 is all about identity. I would like you to write down 7 pieces of things that make you who you are. So for me, I might write radio guy because I enjoy listening to radio. I enjoy producing radio. I might write cook or gardener. I might write French Canadian because that's my father's ethnicity. That's my surname is a French Canadian surname. I might write father, right? Because it's a part of who I am. And I want you to write down 7 things that make you who you are. So you could put things like, funny. People might call you funny, or soccer player because it might be your favorite sport. So I want you to pause the video here and write down 7 pieces of your identity. Okay. Now what I would like you to do is I would like you to go through and I want you to cross off 2 things, okay, that you could live without. So just, go through that list and cross off 2 things that you think you could live without and still preserve the core of who you are. So go ahead and cross those off that list. Okay, now I would like you to go ahead and do 2 more, all right? I want you can pause the video if it's going to take you some time, but I want you to preserve the list of the core pieces of your identity. So go ahead and cross off 2 more so you only have 3 remaining pieces of your identity. So now what you could do after I give you these instructions is pause the video. I would like you to, this is going to be question 1 that you present to me in the discussion board. Question 1 is I want you to write down the 7 things that you originally selected. I want you to write down the ones that you preserved as the core of your identity. Okay? And then I want you to write how it felt cross those things out? How did it feel to, have to cross out, sci-fi junkie or, computer fan or whatever, thing that makes you who you are? Like, so for me personally, it would be very difficult for me to cross out my love of cooking. But I might do that if it were between being a father and being a fan of cooking. Obviously, I would choose my identity as a father, right? So I want you to go ahead and write how it felt. So pause the video here and write down the 7 things you originally selected, the 3 things you preserved, and write how it felt to cross out those things. So pause the video. So this is called identity threat. Identity threat. This is an activity that I do with the program Celia that I've mentioned in past classes. But identity threat is something that happens all the time when you're asked to give up a piece of who you are. You might be in a conversation with a group of friends who really hate action movies or something, okay? But you really secretly love action movies and you don't want to say anything. That's identity threat. Our identity is who we are. It's how we think of ourselves. It's how other people think of us. I'd like you to imagine like a eulogy, right? When somebody passes away, the things that they're talking about is what they meant to these individuals, like the people who survive the individual. And that's why identity exists. Identity is our core of ourself, and it's the core of how people think about us. When they close their eyes and they think about who you are as a person, they're typically thinking about pieces of your identity. So I want to briefly go into a couple things. I know this is not as interactive as the typical lectures that we do, the typical class discussion. So I'm going to try to make it as fun as possible, but I'm trying to reduce the time so you don't have to sit in front of a huge video. So I just want to present some concepts. Selective exposure. Basically, selective exposure says that we expose ourselves to things that are congruent with our beliefs. They're congruent with our wishes. They're congruent with who we are. So I'm not going to go to a Comic Con, if I'm not into comic books. But I might go to a sports convention, right? If I like sports, but I'm not really into comic books, I'm probably going to avoid going to a comic convention, but I might go to a big autograph signing convention or whatever they do at big expo centers where retired athletes get together and sign their merchandise for big fans. It's different types of fandom, right? I might not go and spend a whole lot of time at a sports bar if that's not my thing, right? If I'm not into sitting there for 4 hours on end to watch a football game, I might not expose myself to that, and it's not just about hobbies. Similarly, we might not go and expose ourselves to people who have different political beliefs than we do. We might not go and expose ourselves to people with different cultural backgrounds than us. It might be uncomfortable for you to go to a restaurant, an ethnic restaurant in an ethnic community, because you might be the odd one out or the one of the marginal identity. And that's what the cultural immersion activity, before we had to take these classes online, that was what the cultural immersion activity was intended to do, was to put yourself in this position where you couldn't selectively expose yourself to certain things. You had to take yourself outside of that comfort zone to see what it felt like. So that's selective exposure. So what is selective perception then? Selective perception is when we choose to listen to certain things, some people, your great uncle might be like, oh, she lets, the words go in one ear and out the other, huh? That's selective perception. Selective perception is we see, we smell, we taste, we hear, We feel things that we want to experience. We only experience the things that maybe are comfortable to us. Might not want to hear what's going on the subway when we're there, so we might tune it out, right? You might take a bus to school every day, and it might be very full of commotion, and there was all sorts of conversations, and you just choose not to hear them, right? Typically, we do only perceive and listen to certain things and see things the way we want to see them. So a couple days ago, it was very overcast, and you might choose to think of the entire day as gloomy and dreary, but I choose to think of it as there is a sliver of time when on one of those overcast days, the sun, when it's setting, passes underneath the clouds and it lights up the whole area. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things is when it's an overcast day and there happens to be a break in the clouds somewhere off to the west, and when the sun sets, it illuminates the whole area. That's selective perception, okay? So remember the listening activity. That's going to be crucial for being able to process some of these things. So what is a schemata? A schemata is a mental structure used to organize information. So what I'm going to do is I want you to pause the video and take a look at, there's a activity, not an activity, but a website I want you to peruse. And this is, schematas are in line with the kinds of things that I study. A schemata is a mental structure that helps to shape how you view other things. So you can think of it like a stereotype. So you have a schemata of what a teacher should be. And if I act differently than your other teachers, that is because that is likely to challenge the schemata that you have about who I am, right? We start every semester, and it's difficult to do this, but I try to think of every new class as a new group of students, but after a while we get into this rut where we can come to expect and come to experience different characteristics from the people and places that we interact with. So a schemata is a mental picture, not like a prototype, but a mental picture in your brain of what something should be, what an experience should be. So if you have a bad experience with law enforcement, right, and your first time getting pulled over was not a very pleasant experience, you're likely going to have a schemata in your brain that, sends off a signal for you to be alert every interaction you have with law enforcement subsequently, okay? That's what a schemata is. A schemata serves as a foundational kind of experience that informs all future experiences, okay? So what I want you to do is I want you to pause the video, and I would like you to go look at the website that I shared. And these are different KFCs. And the reason why I share this is because I use it as a metaphor for showing how a schemata is. If anybody's ever seen like a Pizza Hut repurposed as a Mr. Meatball, or seen a KFC that is now a blood bank or something like that, you will automatically notice the shape of that building, or see an old Taco Bell that's now turned into Taco Man or something like that. So go look at that website. This is a list. This is a series of KFCs and what they now become. But you can see the schemata, right? The schemata is the original structure, okay? So think of schematas as mental structures. Even if we're only thinking of personalities, a schemata is a mental structure that we're using. So pause the video. Go ahead and look at that. Okay, now I would like you to write about one schemata that you have developed over the years. It can be a schemata dealing with places, a schemata dealing with people, types of people. I want you to just share in the discussion board a schemata that you've developed. That's going to be question 2. Just write briefly What is a schemata that you've developed over the years? So I might share that, all people who work in pizza places are fun-loving individuals who love to party after work. This is what my experience is like when I worked in a pizza place. The people I worked with, they had a good time. They had fun, right? So that's my schemata. I just think everybody who works in a pizzeria is the same character, right? That's my schemata of who they are. So go ahead and pause the video. I just want you to answer the question, what is a schemata that you've developed over the years? Okay. Origin stories are stories that we develop in order to, get a hold on our identity. So everybody has an origin story. So I have an origin story. I tell you my origin story at the beginning of the semester. I wasn't really into school. I went to culinary arts school to start off with. I wasn't, that good of a student, but I eventually found my way. So my third question is, I would like you to write, okay, what is your origin story? I want you to write your origin story. You've all seen superhero stories like, Peter Parker gets bit by a spider, he turns into Spider-Man. I want you to write down your origin story. What is your origin story? So pause the video, and that's question 3. What is your origin story? Okay. The next thing I would like to do is talk about Goffman's performance of self. And this will be the last thing we talk about. But Goffman's performance of self is basically an idea that we are all performing who we are as individuals. So I want you to pause the video now, and I would like you to play it's MC Breed's No Future in Your Frontin'. Okay, so this video, fronting, okay, in hip hop parlance, has typically been, in the 21st century and the end of the 20th century, it kind of took on a different meaning from where it was originally used in the 90s. Fronting is a perception. So when you're fronting, you have a perception of someone that is not quite accurate. So when I say stop fronting, okay, I'm saying to stop thinking about me or thinking about us in a way that is different. So MC Breed in this video is saying that you should, you might think that I'm selling drugs. You might think that I am, robbing or stealing, but all of my money is hard-earned through rapping, right? And it might look like I am selling drugs, but I'm not, right? So stop fronting. That's basically what MC Breed is saying. And this is what Erving Goffman's performance of self is explaining, is that we present a front, okay? And the front is what people see, right? Then there's a back region that people don't see. Our front is our presentation that we put on for other people. So when you come to school, wearing your funkiest clothes, when you go to work wearing a shirt. I mean, I'm fronting right now. I'm not wearing this at home. Okay, this thing that I'm wearing right now, this shirt, this is like my sit at the computer, make a video for my student shirt. I'm wearing a t-shirt. I'm wearing sweat shorts. I'm hanging out in my house, but I even like pushed my hair and made sure it looked good on the camera. I'm fronting, okay? I am putting on a front. This is Erving Goffman's performance of self. I stage my house behind me, okay? I wouldn't show you the rest of my house. The rest of my house is an absolute mess. Now, give you an example of what I'm talking about. Look at this. What is that? My God, I don't want anybody to see that. That's my daughter's playpen that she doesn't use, just filled up with all sorts of things that we wanted to keep out of the house. That's fronting, okay? That's me putting on a performance here. So what you can see is the front. What's behind the scenes is the back region, okay? There's front regions and back regions, okay? Goffman's performance of self says that we put on a show for people, okay? We're putting on a show for individuals. And that's a nice way to understand identity. So, there is... I would like to talk, and this always leads to a really, really wonderful discussion. But your final question that I would like to ask you, your question number 4, I think that's 4. Your question number 4 is, how do people front online? Okay, how does Irving Goffman's performance of self manifest itself online? I would like you to just write briefly about what you've noticed. How do people create personas, and how do people create and do impression management online? That is your 4th question. So thank you. That's chapter 3. I tried to keep it as brief as possible. 21-minute video. Do the activities. That is your assignment for this week. Thank you so much. Chapter 3 discussion is over.